Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of Sensing the Senseless, my new podcast. I'm super excited to be back. A little sad that I don't have a guest for you as I was trying to get organized, but still working out some stuff with Zoom and doing stuff remote and learning a whole bunch of new technology. Got signed up for an Anchor account, which is going to allow me to get all these podcasts posted to iTunes and Spotify. So right now we're still on YouTube. You can find us easy under Sensing the Senseless. So please like and subscribe and share and comment and all that good stuff there. Really want to get conversations going, open and honest, and every different type of view conversations going. And that's actually what I want to start off with talking about, because I recorded this episode a couple of days ago and went back and was listening to it and realized that I kind of went against my own goals with the show, which is, to really show what a variety of opinions there are within America right now, especially a common misunderstanding. There's a variety of opinions and interpretations of what's going on within the LGBT community in America right now. And, I talked about some really sensitive subjects, as you'll see here in a moment, as we kind of dig into what's happened over the last 2 weeks. We have a new president, we have executive orders, we have more cancel culture. We've got everything going on. And so there's so much to talk about. And I want to make sure that as I discuss it, that I kind of bring up a lot about the multitude of perspectives on each issue, rather than this podcast isn't just me and my opinion and the soon to be amazing guests that we're going to have on the show are going to be a complete range of opinions. And so I just want to stick to that. I just want to work on my own self, my own becoming a better liberal, because that's going to be the recurring theme of Sensing the Senseless, is how do we have an open-minded, progressive perspective in the midst of all this misinformation, of all of this cancel culture, of all of this has to toe this part of the party line, or you can't be a liberal, you can't be one of us. And that's just not true. And that's what I'm here to represent. But I'm still here to represent the opinions of that, not represent, but discuss the opinions of that centrist left, because there are a ton of people out there that are supporting those ideas. And we want them to have as equal a voice as I have my voice. And as I give voice to people that are more conservative than me, even though I don't agree with them. So, there's, you could say there's two parties in America. You could say there's kind of four groupings, left, right, and far left and far right. Or you could say that there are 330 million Americans, each with their own perspective, each with their own lived experience. There may not be 30 million different sets of absolute fact and truth, but there are 33 million fallible, lovable children of God here in America, experiencing life in a unique way, and each of them has something to share, and each of them has a vote, and each of them is part of the dialogue of where we are headed as a nation. So let's jump right into where we're headed as a nation and talk about the inauguration. So, wow. I was nervous, y'all. I was scared about the inauguration. I thought, oh my God, here is, this first call to unity. We've just had the riots, we've just had all this stuff, and now we're going to not allow anybody to come to the inauguration, and we're going to put a sea of American flags out in front of the Capitol. And, I posted about it, got some feedback about it. Turns out all of y'all were super excited about it, and turns out I was wrong. It was beautiful. It was such a subtle reminder of those that we've lost over the last year to COVID. It was a subtle reminder that not so subtle reminder that this new administration is going to take seriously the need to social distance and to keep people safe. And, and that we're not going to tolerate the type of illegal and destructive and disrespectful activity that happened during the Capitol riots. We're going to keep our people and our Capitol and our leaders safe. So, it did turn out to be a little different than I thought. And I will comment on one thing. There is, one thing I'm trying to do and trying to get my fellow liberals to do is, think about, I hate to use the word optics, but to think about what it's like from the perspective of the other side. To, there's a a stereotype or an assumption or even some might even say a conspiracy that the left is like super in bed with Hollywood. And well, that might be the one criticism that I have of Inauguration Day, which was it was literally like a tiny little bit of a halftime football show. I mean, Katy Perry, fireworks, Capitol, Joe Biden. If there hadn't been like 30 Hollywood stars singing and performing just, show after show, I might not have gotten that feeling. And I have a feeling, and from what the little bit of conservative news that I listen to is, they did kind of latch on to that. And that's something to think about. Is it great that all these celebrities are super excited, just as we are, to have someone as awful and destructive as Trump out of office? That's great. But could we, as the left, like maybe work on that perception that all of the media and all of the Hollywood, except for Fox News, is, in bed with liberals? Maybe we could work on that. Maybe a couple less celebrities at the inauguration. This is about America. This is about our leaders. This is about people. It's not about Katy Perry. So I did have that one criticism, but I thought it was beautiful. Joe Biden got through his speech, 3-word bites at a time. He stayed awake. I'm trying not to be super critical of him. It was a very unifying speech, and I am incredibly happy to have a Democratic president in office, whether or not he was my preferred candidate or not. So, that's gratitude and acceptance and my perspective. So, there's a lot of people that are truly, utterly overjoyed to have him in office, and we can celebrate with them, even if I'm not celebrating as strongly as them. So that's something there. Another thing I noticed during Inauguration Day, and online, on social media leading up to and after Inauguration Day, and on the news leading up to and during and after Inauguration Day, was this incredible overuse of the word democracy. And I'd love to have somebody, a political scientist, or historian, or someone come on the show and really talk about democracy versus republic versus, electoral college debates, all these things that are really, really in the ethos right now. But yet we constantly use this word defending democracy. Our soldiers are defending democracy. We've got to protect democracy. The Capitol Police are protecting democracy, all these things. So, real quick on that, I just want to remind everyone that we pledge allegiance to the flag and to the republic for which it stands, not the democracy for which it stands. We are a representative form of government. We elect our leaders and they make decisions for us. And what I want to say about that is, and it's going to lead into me talking about the executive orders, because what I'm noticing is this just radical flip-flop. If we eat, not only are we not a true democracy because we, the people, are not voting on all of our laws collectively, and 51% of our opinion on each law is not determining the law, not only are we allowing our representatives to do that for us, our representatives aren't representing us. Each representative is representing its one half of the two-party system. So we're having these huge flip-flops in policy where one president is totally undoing what the last president does, and that side is cheering and going on and and the media is welcoming them, and then we switch, and then the other side is hating everything that's happening for 4 years, and then they're building up their people and they're getting ready for their votes, and then they come in and through executive order or overwhelming congressional power, reversing everything that the last administration does. And that's not what not only is that not a democracy, that's not what even a functional representative republic should be. We could have leaders that, instead of towing the party line and instead of representing 51% or 49% of Americans with their laws, they could look at each issue and they could say, where does America stand on this issue? And they could represent America. They could be a representative democracy. 67% was the last figure, I heard of, people that supported gay marriage. When you look at each issue And you look at, can you imagine the world, the nation that we could live in if our leaders represented the middle of America? And I hate to refer to somebody as conservative and annoying, and fairly bigoted, in my opinion, as Ben Shapiro, but he talks a lot about the 80%. And I try to listen to his podcast. I can barely even get through 20 or 30 minutes of it before I just want to scream. But I'd really like to hear, some of those conservative ideas being argued and played around with, because it helps me understand the parts of the left that I'm not seeing, because we, the left, have forgotten how to look at ourselves and critique ourselves and grow. We think that we're right at everything. So it's really great to hear somebody kind of tear the left a new one, but also at the same time really annoying because he's so goddamn conservative. But he talks a lot about this 80%, and I really think that if our leaders wanted to take part in democracy, if they wanted to stand up for democracy, if they wanted to stand up for what we truly are, a representative republic, then they would represent the people. They would pass laws that represent the middle 60, the middle 80% of Americans, and they wouldn't side with their party and push their party's agenda for 4 years, because that leads right into our next thing, which is these executive orders. So was I thrilled to see Biden get off on a boom, boom running start? Absolutely. Was I excited about 99.9% of all the things of Trump that he was undoing with those executive orders? Yes. Should we be happy with our democracy being a tyrannous dictatorship where the president, through decree, tells the entire nation what to do with a signed order? And should we all be online celebrating Biden for having some of the most aggressive and most number of executive orders in the first week of his presidency? I don't think we should celebrate that. I don't think that's something to celebrate, because it doesn't have to do with me, not being in love with Biden. It has to do with me being terrified of this new flip-flop system that we're doing, and the idea that we're moving further and further away from democracy, and further away from being represented as a people, when our laws are not voted on by our representatives, and when they are put through by in essence, this oligarchy of our cabinet and president, creating all this policy. So that's all I want to say on that. But I want to get into the most difficult thing to talk about, and the reason that I re-recorded this podcast. I was so proud and so deep in my heart grateful to see that our trans men and women will once again be able to serve in our military. I think it was one of the lowest points in the Trump presidency to dishonor people that had already demonstrated their ability to function and serve this nation, both here and abroad, in danger, in peril, even probably sometimes against their own morals, if they are having any morals, thinking about some of the things that we're doing overseas, that, they're willing to be loyal and serve our nation no matter what, and to ask those members to leave simply for the gender that they are is absolutely an atrocity. So I was so grateful for that. I decided to go ahead and really make myself vulnerable and really potentially have to navigate some really icy waters by talking today, and also the post that I posted on social media about Biden's decision to require high schools to allow people born XY to be allowed to compete in sports with people that are born XX. And, I've been a science nerd my whole life. I've been gay my whole life. I have been in support of trans rights my whole life. I have, and it doesn't matter that I have trans friends. That doesn't make me not transphobic. Having a black friend doesn't make you not racist. But it does give you the opportunity to see the human side of an issue when you know someone that's experiencing discrimination. And I am a cisgender man, and I will never know what it's like to not feel at home in the genetic gender that my body was born into. I will never know what that feeling is like. And so that's what makes this matter so delicate. because I have some concerns around that. And I posted about those concerns. And I had one of the most amazing posts, just comment after comment after comment of people both standing up for the position that we should allow this sports competition, and those who were questioning whether or not that started to encroach on another marginalized group, which is XX women, who have fought for generations to be able to have their own sports, to be able to medal and compete with people within their genetic advantage field. And so that brings up another layer of sensitivity, because to talk about that genetic advantage that XY persons have over XX persons, you're saying that men are stronger and faster than women, and it's a bell curve. There are many women that could dominate me in sports, and I'm a fairly fit guy and certified trainer and all this stuff. So I'm well aware that humans overlap with both genetic gender and chosen gender and all these things. So, and by the way, I'm gonna use terms not perfectly. I'm gonna offend people with this conversation, and that's why I re-recorded this, was because I'm still growing. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to see my own biases and my own fears, and and root out any form of judgment or bigotry or misunderstanding that I can. And so forgive me anywhere along the way, if I misuse a word related to gender and transgender. So I just want to say that with love and with a faith and respect in you, that you will give me that grace to be on this journey of figuring all this stuff out. So, the research that I did reminded me that we have 26 chromosomes, and the difference between a genetically male and genetically female has to do with the Y chromosome. And, I found out that there's 27 genes on that chromosome, and what that means biologically is that men have 27 genes functioning in their body 24 hours a day from the time that they're born till the time that they die, that are different from somebody who's born XX. And women have 2 copies of all of the XX genes. And so they don't just have like I said, 1 copy, they've got 2 copies, and that impacts how strongly those genes are expressed. And there's about 100 genes found on the X chromosome. So I want to leave out something that's incredibly important, but I want to acknowledge it. Many persons are born XXY and XYY and XXX. So there are variants that we're not discussing today. I'm not discussing those today, not to leave those people out, but because they are an even smaller minority of people, and I don't have enough scientific knowledge right now to discuss the genetic implications of those births. So I'm leaving that out with all respect to those people, and I'm just simply today talking about whether or not XY is fair to compete with XX in sports. And overall, throughout posting this post, something that I really learned, because I kind of started off with this absolute definite, I do not think that is fair to genetically born women. And just over the course of the podcast, over reading what my friends said, over having several transgender people comment on the post, it looks like where I've settled, and and I'm very interested into where you all have settled on this conversation, is that maybe we should require hormonal transitioning as a component of allowing high school sports competition for transgendered individuals. Because when someone has begun hormonal transitioning, a significant amount of the genetic advantage of testosterone is removed, and a significant amount of advantage of testosterone is given, depending on if we're talking about male to female or female to male transgender individuals. So, that was a compromise that I felt like was more kind and compassionate to everyone. Because what people said that changed my mind was, what is it like for this person that's in high school that wants to compete in sports, that's being told that they either can't compete in sports at all, or they have to compete in sports with a gender that they don't identify with, it, that they are not internally. And I can't imagine what that would be like today. I'm grateful today that I think more people are acknowledging the trials and pains that transgender people are going through, and I hope and believe that a transgendered person going through high school today may have a better chance of not having that quite as much shame and judgment and bullying as 10, 20, 30, 50 years ago. So I believe that we're making progress. I don't believe we're anywhere near where we need to be. And that's why I think this needs to be a comfortable and open discussion, not comfortable, an uncomfortable and open discussion that we all have. And that's kind of where I want to end on this, which is the ability to have this conversation. And a lot of people private messaged me and said, thank you so much for opening that dialogue. It's such a sensitive topic. And because again, and I hate to keep coming back to that word cancel culture, basically there is a significant portion of the left that says that if I don't 100% agree that trans people should be legislated to be able to compete in the sports of their gender in high school, then I am transphobic. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's useful, and I don't think it's true. And what I think is that we've come, like I just mentioned earlier, we've come a really, really long way in the last 50 years, and we won't be able to go a lot further where we need to be as a society with a true understanding, love, and acceptance and embracing of this marginalized group without having open conversations, without asking the tough questions, without looking at how sometimes standing up for the rights of one marginalized group can start to infringe on the rights of another marginalized group. And that's similar and parallel to a lot of sort of constitutional debates that we have, where we're looking and balancing constitutional rights, say freedom of speech, where we are looking at social media and we're looking at misinformation, and we're saying that yes, part of a representative republic functioning properly is having freedom of speech, but we also have this other right. We want to have the right to not be misled. We want to have the right to not be manipulated. We want to have these rights. So, I think there's a lot of instances like that, and I think it's very intriguing that a lot of these things are happening all at once, because for me, as a person who really looks at things energetically, I think we're starting to see that all of our rights as a society and a people are all in this interplayed dance where we all have to look out for each other and all have to respect each other and really see the consequences of what we're asking for legislatively, and all that stuff. And so, I'm going to bring up all these topics again and again, because this is America. This is, I go back to thinking about the founding of America, and I go back to these discussions, and I go back to, our early founders going to France, and, all these people sitting around and talking about all these ideas, and then so carefully, working out this new system of government. And in a way, I feel like that's what's happening with civil rights, is that we're in this discussion finally. We have a large enough numbers of Black Lives Matter supporters. We have large enough numbers of trans rights supporters. We have large enough numbers of these people where we can really change things, where we can really move towards equality. And that's such an amazing time, but it's such a dangerous time if we shut down the dialogue, and if we push people into two groups, and if we don't ask the difficult questions about what's best for our children. Again, is it transphobic to talk about at what age hormone blockers is reasonable? At what age is transgendered surgery reasonable? Transitioning surgery reasonable? These are questions that need to be asked on both an ethical, moral, scientific, and social level. And if we can't have those open conversations together, if we can't be bold and brave to be willing to make a few mistakes, to be willing to offend a few people, rather than be silent and do nothing and allow because when we do that, we allow those two extremes. We lose the 80%. We allow the dialogue to be between the far left and the far right. And we lose democracy. We lose our representation. We lose our voice, the 80%, the middle. So let's not be afraid. Let's sit down with those who've had different experiences than us. Let's sit down with our transgendered friends. Let's be honest and say, can you be patient with me? Are you in a safe enough space, in your journey to discuss this with me? There's ways to talk to people that are incredibly respectful and at the same time incredibly vulnerable. And I hope that you can join me in being brave and being able to make mistakes. Because like I said earlier in this, I have made probably several, verbal mistakes in the way that I use these words just today on this podcast. And this is my second time re-recording it with the intent to be even more loving and respectful to people who have already gone through more than what I, would ever, be able to understand. So thank you all for listening to that. That's definitely the most difficult part of the podcast. I want to shift gears a little bit and kind of end on a thing, and I'll bridge that over by saying, here's this again, this continued conversation about the far left, the far right, how our two-party system is dividing us and making everything tremendously challenging. Because what each group is doing is judging each other's side by the most extreme members. I just had to delete a comment on a post that was still talking about the riots. Here we are several weeks later. I know we need to not forget that. It's incredibly important. It's not something to minimize. But they were talking about how Trump almost accomplished a coup. And, I just got... It's not funny. It's not funny. And their perspective is not funny because it's sad that that's how dramatically far from statistically accurate the media can hype up and get you to believe. So, we have 30,000 people organized protesting at the Capitol. We have about 1,000 of those individuals that think they want to be part of a revolution, think they want to be part of anarchy, think they want to be part of QAnon, think they want to be part of Trump's army. And, they are going through the police barricades and trespassing on Capitol property and going inside to the centers of our government, to the centers of our republic, not the centers of our democracy. And, and then within that group, we have an incredibly smaller group, in the realm of 10 to 50 individuals. So now we've gone from 30,000 to 1,000 to 20 to 50 individuals who are armed, who have agendas, who are coordinating with outside groups, who have zip ties, who are calling for Pelosi and Pence's, to be hanged or for their heads, all these things. That is such a tiny, minuscule group that it is literally impossible for me personally to make the mental jump to say that we almost had a coup. Because how could 50, let's say there weren't 50, but let's say there were 50 armed people that had managed to get a hold of some of these congressmen and women. Wow, they're gonna hold down a new form of government that they've overthrown with no reinforcements, with no military, with literally just the words of Donald Trump. I mean, I don't know. To me, that's just a really big leap. I think that all of those people should be prosecuted. I think that Trump should be held accountable for his incitement. I think a lot of things. But I'm very intrigued at all these other opinions. And here again, as I don't want this to just be me presenting my case against this other person. He this friend of mine really believes that we almost had a full coup, and I know that there are a lot of other people out there who believe that, and so I'm really intrigued by this belief. And I guess what I would ask of you is not just to blatantly agree with me, but to think about the numbers that I'm laying down, because the media shows us every murder. It shows us every new inappropriate police interaction with African Americans. It shows us all these things, all of which need to be shown, but it creates a cognitive bias. It creates a media magnification bias, because now that we have national media instead of local media, we're hearing all of it, and it feels like there's more of it. But when you go to graphs, when you go to incident reports, when you account for population increase in America, a lot of these things, from child kidnappings to, all of these things, and it's no wonder that QAnon has latched on to this child thing, because we hear about every missing child now. We hear about all these things. And, that's just a total different road that you can use as an example to talk about this media magnification. So it's studied, it's well documented by social scientists and psychologists. You could Google it. Media magnification bias. Read up on it. It's something that I think we can all add to our personal repertoire of tools to pull out to fight our own individual tendencies to fall into bias and to fall into media misinformation. So you can present the truth on TV and you can still be misleading. Kind of scary, right? So I don't know what else I want to say there. It's scary, guys. It's really scary to see that we've got, these 5, 6, 7, 8, 330 million, fractions of perceptions of what's happening in our country right now. And was the Capitol storming an incredible bad sign of some things that are going on in America that need to be addressed? Yes. Do these people need to be, prosecuted for their crimes? Yes. Did they almost overthrow our government? Absolutely not. They didn't get anywhere near it. Not even, I just don't even know what else to say there. And I want to talk about one last thing. Diane Feinstein. I posted a post and I said, should we cancel Diane Feinstein? And then I had a long blurb about it. And I didn't know a ton about this woman. I did not know that she was the first female mayor of San Francisco. I didn't know she was our oldest female senator. I did not know that something that you might expect of somebody that's been around politics that long, that her policy lines don't actually fit now within what we would call a true progressive. San Francisco School Board commissioned a group together to come and to look at the names of all their high schools. And they came up with a list of 44 names of high schools that they recommend should be renamed, because the people that they were named after did not demonstrate the kind of humanity that they wanted to represent. Now, I'm only going to mention 3 of these names: FDR, Abraham Lincoln, and Diane Feinstein. So, and I'm going to focus on Diane Feinstein because the reason that they gave that no high school should be named after Diane Feinstein was the fact that in 1984, there was a convention center in San Francisco while she was mayor that had a historical flag display. And it had the Confederate flag in it. Now, we've moved together as a society and we've grown up together as a society as we've discovered more about white privilege, as we've discovered more about how to root out racism. And we've decided as a society that Confederate flags are no longer acceptable anywhere at any time for any reason. And I think that's awesome. However, in 1984, a flag that was flown as a representative of a history and not flown to show pride in the flag was not remotely as controversial, and she eventually took the flag down. Now, she took the flag down with some resistance, and I want to say that, at first I didn't know about that. Some people really came on the post and informed me, so thank you guys. I learned a lot from you, and I'm always willing to be totally wrong, But here, I don't think that I am. Even after I kind of got all the information about who Diane Feinstein is, her history, her voting record, and all this stuff, she was named after a high school 14 years ago. And to say that because she didn't have the perfect progressive left motivations for taking down the flag, and that she didn't take it down soon enough, but that she was the mayor responsible for taking it down after it had been up much longer than her mayorship, to me is a pretty freaking weak reason to dishonor somebody by removing their name from something they were honored to be named after. And this opened up a whole nother conversation, which is, and it opens up a potential hypocrisy for me. And so I want to share that with you, which is, individual locales should have as much autonomy over their communities and their lives as possible. So for me to come in and for me to even have an opinion and to publicly criticize something that the San Francisco School Board is doing when I am not a citizen of San Francisco, I am not an active parent in San Francisco, I am not part of the school board of San Francisco, you might ask yourself, how dare you, Philip? Where do you have the rights to come in here and say that? And that bridges back to this conversation of how the left and the right are judging each other by their most extreme parts right now. And it also reminded me of, the left's arguments about the police, and this isn't a direct comparison, and it's not as extreme, and it's not as important, and it doesn't relate to generations of marginalization and racism. But when we talk as the left, as a group, about police, one of the arguments that was brought up was, yeah, most police are good, but they're culpable because they're working with these other police that are truly, doing some not great stuff. And so they're culpable. And, I thought about that line of argument and I kind of applied it here. And I just thought, I'm not responsible for what the most extreme members of the left does. And I shouldn't judge the right by what the most extreme members of its party are doing. But we do have some culpability if we stay silent and don't call out extremism within our own party, because it casts a shadow, and when we're silent about it, it shows it's kind of a silent nod of acceptance, so I do feel like I need to speak out about it, because if I'm going to be lumped by 50% of the nation, by the right, here I am, a liberal, 50% of the nation is going to lump me in this group with a group of people that have determined that we can't name a high school after Abraham Lincoln because he, in his life, did not demonstrate enough that Black lives mattered to him. Whew! I don't want to be lumped in that level of progressivism. As we really dive into true history, as we really look at Lincoln, can we find ways that he still had, systemic racism built into his life? Yeah, this was 1865. This is the man who read the Emancipation Proclamation to us. This is a person who put his political career on the line. This is a person who changed the course of history for the entire world, and especially for the first major step in our country's history in improving the lives of African American men and women on a broad scale. If that's not enough to demonstrate that Black lives matter to him, then I don't know how to have this conversation with you right now. Can we still look at ways that he could have improved? Can we still say that almost every person alive at that time had, on average, more racial misunderstanding and more racial judgment and more racial hate than we do today? Absolutely. It's so interesting. I mean, I just think about all this stuff. So, here's Diane Feinstein, she hugged a Republican senator. She has, allegedly been, in politics too long, and she's too old, and she's senile, which are incredibly ageist and even in some ways sexist things to say, because we promote Bernie Sanders and we promote Joe Biden, who are both men who are incredibly getting up there in both age and in their ability to make complete sentences and, all these things. So, I think it's really hypocritical for the left to be in, this place of judgment towards Diane Feinstein. I think she's an amazing example of a female breaking through glass ceilings and representing her country. I think to dishonor her by removing her from the name over something that happened in 1984, where she actually came to the right conclusion. She just didn't come to it fast enough, and she didn't come to it with the right mentality that the woke progressive left of today would like of her. Come on, guys. Come on. So, we're at 40 minutes, kind of talked through all this stuff. I want to remind everyone again that I am doing this for the first time. This is the second episode of Sensing the Senseless. If you didn't check out the first episode, please go back and check that out. It's even a rougher cut than this. And I'm super excited. I'm going to have a transgendered friend on the podcast. So we're going to be able to dive into these issues and really have it appropriately represented by somebody who's gone through that. And, I want to challenge everybody this week. I want to challenge everybody this week to think twice before blocking a friend, to actually listen to what somebody who has a different perspective is saying, to actually take some time out each week, maybe even each day, to ask yourself, where have I been biased today? Where has my interpretation of the media been biased today? And where am I exhibiting some of the same levels of anger, the same levels of judgment, the same levels of closed-mindedness of the other side of the political aisle that I speak out so much against? Because I think that if we start doing that collectively as the left, if we start being willing to humbly look at ourselves, to ask ourselves both on a collective level and an individual level, how we can grow and change, how our media is biased, how our ideas can become too dogmatic, how our brains can become too closed-minded, I think we can grow tremendously as a party, as a Democratic Party, as a progressive group of individuals, and just as a general left. And I'm super excited. I'm super proud of all of you that have begun this process with me. I'm super grateful for those of you who are listening and to me ramble, and I'm super excited to come back to you in a week or so with another podcast where I'm going to actually broach the subject of COVID. Oh my goodness. Any single thing, I've probably gotten the most criticism and flack for my pretty non-traditional way of looking at the COVID situation. So I'm going to come at that again with a lot of respect for all the lives we've lost. I'm going to come at that again with a lot of respect for the different types of views and ways of interpreting the data. But I really want to dig into the data, see what y'all have to say about the numbers and about what's happening in America today. So again, thanks so much for listening to Sensing the Senseless, episode 2, and we'll see y'all soon. Bye-bye.